Hello everyone, how are we doing today? So, I was thinking, something I haven't talked about in a long time. Oh, by the way, really good. Clyde Mays, if you've not had it and you like whiskey or bourbon, start with this. This is their original. It is fantastic, absolutely affordable. I think it's $35 a bottle, something like that. You will not regret it. This is also fantastic. This just kicks up the proof from, I think, what is this, 85 to 92, but fantastic. And it goes on up the charts. I've got some 102, but it's absolutely wonderful. Try it before the world discovers it, and it just takes off. But I thought I should talk a little bit about something that happened about 54 years ago this week, give or take. And that is the opening of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. And it's gone through a lot of iterations, but there's something somewhat interesting about a character in the ride that spent 40-something years sort of just living in the ether and existed. And I find that somewhat amazing, and I thought I'd take a minute and talk about it, mostly because I want to. And yeah, I'm wearing the Oppenheimer hat, but you know what's kind of funny? Do you remember back in, Christ, what year was it? 1986? So I was 16. Poltergeist 2 came out. Not a particularly good movie. The first Poltergeist, though my family found it terribly amusing, I think it was intended to be somewhat scary, but I remember all of us laughing through a lot of it, and it's a fond memory of mine. But anyway, 1986, Poltergeist 2 came out, and do you remember the character? It was played by this cat, Julian Beck. That was the actor. I think he was a musician for the most part, but he played Reverend Hank or Henry, probably Reverend Henry Kane. And he can't come into the house to get the little girl, Carol Ann, they're here, that little girl. And he wore a hat very similar to this. I think he's like, "Oh, you're welcome." No, that's not it. That's the little gal from the first movie. But anyway, here, I pulled up a couple pictures. Take a look. Take a look right now. Go ahead. Right, the hat's kind of similar. And maybe the face too, sadly. If Mr. Beck had grown a beard, would we have a similar appearance? Maybe I'm fat. Certainly fatter than he was. But anyway, I digress. So back 1969, first part of August, the Haunted Mansion is going to open at Disneyland. And it's one of my most cherished and favorite rides. Jungle Cruise obviously is I just absolutely adore that ride. And a lot of people don't really understand it, and I'm not here to try to explain it. I just know that it's definitely number one. And to be honest, Haunted Mansion is a solid number two, and maybe even occasionally number one, which is one of the reasons why, we've got the Jungle Cruise tattoo and the guy we're going to be talking about here, the Hatbox Ghost and Haunted Mansion tattoos. You figure it's really, you got the Haunted Mansion, Pirates, Indiana Jones, the Jungle Cruise. There's really a trifecta right in there, if you don't count Indiana Jones, because it's a newer ride. I'm starting to ramble, and it's a little early to ramble. But anyway, so the Haunted Mansion is going to open in 1969, and the cats that kind of brought that together, and I'm going to leave out some names. They're, Hopper Goff, Mark Davis, Ken Anderson, Claude Coates, Raleigh Crump, and Yale Gracie. And one of the things that Mr. Gracie did was create a character that they were calling the Hatbox Ghost, and he was basically a cloaked figure with this green face. And in 1969, he appeared across from the bride on the ride in the attic, and the idea was that his face would go, and I'm going to assume most of you are familiar with the Hatbox Ghost. His face would go from, or his head, from his shoulders down to the box. And initially it was supposed to be on the beat of the bride's heart in the attic. Well, on August the 7th and 8th, they did cast member previews, as they often do, and basically employee previews. And the Hatbox Ghost was on the ride. Well, it disappeared shortly thereafter. No one knows exactly. Some will say it was never seen by the public, but I'm going to show you some clips here of some home movies that I managed to dig up. It took a minute, but I found them. That actually shows guests of the park seeing the Hatbox Ghost, probably within that same week or 2 week period before it was removed. And you have to understand, once it was removed, we'll say by the end of August, it did not reappear at Disneyland until April the 10th of 2015. And there are people, probably including myself, that would swear that we remember seeing the Hatbox Ghost on that ride at some point through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And the reality was, that is not true. Sort of a Mandela effect, right? But for some reason, that character, probably through marketing, the Hatbox Ghost appeared in some other Disney items, continued to live on for decades before basically the technology caught up. In 1969, I think it was a lighting effect that would go from the shoulders down to the box. And from what I read, it worked perfectly fine in Glendale, but as a practical application in the ride, because of its proximity to what they call the doom buggies, for those of you who've been on the ride, the carriage that takes you through, it never worked quite right. Never worked quite right, so they just yanked it. And it took them 40 years to get the technology right, presumably. And then when they put it back on the ride, it wasn't in the attic, it's actually in the balcony. For those of you who don't know, and there's probably a great many, as you go through, you see the bride. This is the doom buggy. You see the bride on the left, and then you kind of come around a corner, and then the Hatbox Ghost is just as the doom buggy turns, and you kind of go down the hill, if you will, into the cemetery. Well, really, that represents being thrown from the window. Instead of looking to the left when you're on the ride, look to the right. You'll actually see facades of I'll say the back side of the mansion, and it gives you the impression that you're actually being thrown from the window, and well, I guess to your death. Although I don't know if falling from the second story would kill you necessarily, but that's neither here nor there. And that's why the graveyard keeper, his little dog Bones, I think his name is scared because they see you as a ghost. You're dead. You got tossed from the window. But I digress. The Hatbox Ghost itself, for 45 years, was never on the ride, but people swear that it was, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, it never had appeared at Walt Disney World or any of the other parks around the planet, but this year it is officially at Walt Disney World. And I hear there's a bunch of upset people because of where they've placed it. I think it's very early in the ride in one of the hallways, and it kind of messes up the storyline because the Hatbox Ghost is dead, hence Ghost, and he should be appearing later. But since I've not been on the ride in a couple of years, and obviously the Hatbox Ghost wasn't there, I can't really comment on that. But anyway, take a look at some of this promotional material that I found early on. It's 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter film from 1969, and you'll see even the Haunted Mansion plaque is all shiny and new. Today, they've turned green from age and not being buffed. I thought that was kind of interesting. And at the very end, you will see some home movie footage, presumably 8mm film, of you've got the submarine adventure, and then you'll see the Hatbox Ghost. You got the cat that's on the candelabra. At the very end, though, you'll see an image. It's grainy and gray and hard to see. But there were a few people, non-cast members, that actually got to see the Hatbox Ghost before they yanked it. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But here, take a look. Take a look at this footage, and then we'll talk about it here on the other side. Interesting, right? Kind of fun. Anyway, I know this is slightly disjointed, but I wanted to take a moment and just sort of share that footage that I found, and just a taste of the history of the Hatbox Ghost. Crack a book, do your own investigations if you're interested. I think there's tremendous history surrounding the Haunted Mansion, and I have seen the movie, and I really can't recommend it more. Yes, it's geared for, 12 to 14-year-olds is its core audience, but it's a really nice movie. You laugh, it'll bring a tear to your eye. It really carries itself very, very well. I think everybody involved did a good job in capturing the spirit of the Haunted Mansion, the ride. There's a gajillion Easter eggs, a gajillion. But it was a lot of fun. I think the world today is so hard on movies. Is it going to change your life? No. Is it the greatest movie ever? No. Just like The Dial of Destiny, the Indiana Jones. Is it Raiders of the Lost Ark? No. Is it a terrible movie? No. Part of the problem, do they de-age Harrison Ford really well? Yes. The problem is when he speaks, he's an 80-year-old guy. He's not a 40-year-old guy, and you can tell. And he walks like an 80-year-old man, not a 40-year-old man. But if you can kind of get past that, it's not a terrible movie, and neither was Crystal Skull. They're just movies. Everybody forgets the first one came out in, 1980 or 81? It's been, 40-something years since the first one came out. There's generations that don't even know who Indiana Jones is. I'm going to say there's a generation that doesn't even know Indiana. They don't even know what that is. especially considering the public school system. Anyway, I've babbled on enough. Hopefully you got a kick out of this. I apologize. It's been a weird day, and I've been thinking about the Hatbox Ghost, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts, as disjointed as they may be. But hopefully you enjoyed the old footage, and like I said, do your own investigations. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, in this world, when you can be anything you want, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving, and we'll see you next time. Bye.